Alright, welcome to Eugen's Wargame Airland Battle. In this tutorial we will be going over basic deck building. So this is the main menu. Over on the left hand side you'll see a panel. So let's go ahead and click on deck. This is going to be your deck list. As you can see, I have several different decks that I have built myself, and down below you'll see a number of pre-built decks. For this tutorial we are just going to build our own deck. When picking a faction you have two options. You have the NATO forces or PAC forces, that being blue 4 for NATO and red 4 for PAC. So let's just go ahead and name this deck NATO real quick. As you see in this metal button here, you can select different bonuses. This will bring up different options such as national deck options such as US, UK, France, or you can pick different types of decks such as motorized, armored, or air assault, and the era that you want your deck to be set in, whether that be pre-1975 or pre-1980. All three of these type of deck limiters will give you extra bonuses within the deck, such as picking a nationality such as US will give you access to prototype vehicles during that time. Type will give you access to more units of that type, and era will limit you in the sense of what you can pick. However, it will give you more units from that option than other people would get normally. So for right now, we're just going to kind of ignore these three different modifiers, and let's go ahead and hit create. This is the blank deck building. What this shows you when we're done is just a brief overview of what you have in your deck. You can see there's very diverse tabs that you can pick from. Logistics, infantry, support, tank, recon, vehicle, helo, and plane. We'll be going through all of these, and I'll be giving you just a brief overview of what each one of them does. So let's go ahead and start with logistics. Logistics is going to give you access to do two different types of vehicles. For instance, it'll give you access to both command vehicles and access to resupplying vehicles. Command vehicles are going to allow you to capture certain command points that your team needs. Command points will give you deployment points and allow you to deploy more units to the battlefield. As you can see, there's a very large diversity of what you can pick unit-wise, command-wise, whether that be just a simple Jeep like we have here, and you can go all the way up to a main battle tank command vehicles such as the Canadian Leopard. Be advised, there's a large point difference as the Jeep is only 100 points and the Leopard is is 200 points. So for right now, let's just go ahead and pick an M577 Canadian command vehicle. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see vehicles such as the M35 Cargo and the MD Jupiter. Now what these do are, these are units that will allow you to resupply your units at the front. They carry fuel, spare parts, and munitions back and forth from your forward operating base to your frontline units. There are two different types of logistic vehicles, one being ground as we see here, and also the other being helicopter as we can see in the CH-47C Super Chinook or the French Puma Logistique. So for right now, let's go ahead and take the M35 Cargo the Puma Logistique. And FOBs are important in the sense that they have uh, a very large fuel capacity, and having the ability to transfer um, fuel, spare parts, and munitions uh, either your um, directly to your units if they are within the vicinity, or to a resupplying vehicle such as the Puma Logistique or the M35 Cargo. Nationality does not matter when picking FOBs, so let's go ahead and pick a English one. Let's go ahead and move over to the infantry tab. There, as you can, as you scroll through these, there are a number of different type of infantry. Um, you can have anti-tank infantry, or they fire ATGM missiles, anti-aircraft, sappers, special forces, regular riflemen, and I'm sure I'm missing one more, but we'll get there. Um, so let's take a look at the very top here. You can see that each one of these nations' flags are clickable. This lets you filter out by nation if you choose to do that. So for this deck, you can see, let's take a look at the United States Riflemen real quick. As you can see, there are two tabs on this unit card. One says Rifleman, and the other one will be what type of transport this unit is being transported in. For instance, the very first one is an M35 Cargo. The M35 Cargo is unarmed and unarmored, making it very susceptible to enemy fire. However, it is only 1 point, making your rifleman only 11 points to deploy. Um, you can go with something a bit more expensive, such as the Humvee, or you can get into armored personnel carriers, such as the M113 variants and the Bradley variants. For right now, though, I'm just going to take some riflemen in a M13A1. As you can see, infantry can also have the option of being transported in helicopters, whether that be the nation's equivalent to a Huey, or for instance, United States also gets the option of a Black Hawk. So let's go ahead and look at the British anti-aircraft infantry. For most nations, you'll have two options of anti-aircraft missiles. For instance, the English get both the blowpipe and the javelin. If you take a look at the stats over on the right hand side, you'll see that the English blowpipe is not very good on range or accuracy. However, to counter the poor stats, they are only 5 points to deploy. Now, if you're willing to spend an extra 10 points, you can get the English javelin, which, as you can see, is much better at taking out helicopters, aircraft, and the accuracy is much better. For each one of these teams, two-man teams, such as the Javelin, and when we move on to the ATGMs, you'll see this. Even though it's a two-person team, they are still armed with the nation's standard assault rifle, though be advised that these are definitely not frontline fighting infantry, as there are only two in the group down here in the size you see. So let's go ahead and take the Javelin, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in a English APC. Alright, so now we're going to move on to ATGM, or anti-tank infantry. I'm going to be picking the French nationality for ATGM missiles. The French anti-tank infantry carry the Milan ATGM rocket launcher. ATGM missiles are good for destroying tanks long range. They're not so great for in close and personal battles, as you can look at the rate of fire on the Milan F1. Be advised also that these are only two-person squads, making them definitely not frontline fighting troops. These are more of the in the rear with the gear type of infantry. So let's go ahead and go on to the German special forces. The Germans apparently don't have special forces, although their Panzer Grenadiers are a large infantry group that carry law uh, anti-tank uh, missiles. So let's go ahead and try and find some special forces real quick. Um, Here we go. Alright, so we're going to pick some special forces. I have no idea how to pronounce that. I'm just going to pick them. Special forces are going to act the same way as regular riflemen, except that their accuracy and range are going to be much better than normal riflemen. If you also go through and take a look, I'm not going to go back now, but you'll see a sapper unit. The sappers will carry napalm capabilities, which is very effective for taking out infantry and cover. So we're going to go ahead and move on to support. Support is going to hold all of your artillery, AAA, and MSAM supports. A good rule of thumb is 1 artillery, 1 AAA, and 1 MSAM. So for the AAA, I'm going to pick the Flak Panzer Leopard. Mobile SAM, I'm going to be picking the French AMX-30 Roland. And for my artillery, I'm going to be picking the Canadian M109 RCHA. Something also to keep an eye on when picking your units is whether or not this unit uses radar rounds. This will be, you can see if they use radar rounds underneath the type of gun this unit carries and right above the caliber and ammunition the unit carries. It'll say RAD in brackets, and if you hover over it'll say radar. Using radar rounds will make the unit much more accurate, but also makes them susceptible to SEAD aircraft. SEAD stands for Suppression of Enemy Air Defense. What SEAD aircraft do is they specifically target units that use radar capability and destroy them using ATGM missiles. We have that capability also, both Blue 4 and Red 4, but we'll get to that when we get to the plane tab. So let's go ahead and move on to the tank tab. As you can see here, most of the tank tab is MBTs or main battle tanks, and there are a very limited number of cavalry tanks, such as the Sheridan or the AMX-10. So let's pick some good middle-of-the-road MBTs, such as the Leopard A1A4 as a good middle-of-the-road MBT. I'm also going to be picking a M60A2E3 Starship. Both Starships are a very unique type of tank, as in the sense that they're not exactly main battle tanks, nor are they cavalry tanks. This version that we're looking at now carries both ATGM missiles, 152 millimeter heat rounds, and has a 20 mil cannon on it. This makes it very dangerous to almost every unit across the board. However, the armor is not that great, which means it needs to be supported by other units that specialize in taking out enemy units. So I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, add the Starship to my lineup. I'm also going to add a Leopard 2A1. The Leopard 2A1 is a large MBT and will rival either the M11P Abrams or the M1A1 Abrams, and also rival the British Challenger Mark I, which is also a very large MBT. Okay, so 3 MBTs is pretty good for starters. Let's just throw one more in there, and I'm going to be taking the British Chieftain Mark V. Also be advised when picking out tanks, the armor stats. You can see that, for instance, the Chieftain Mark V has 11 frontal armor, 6 side, 4 in the rear, and 3 on top. When we go into our battle and tactics tutorial, we'll be showing you how to angle your tank's armor so that main frontal armor is getting hit the most, making it last longer. Let's go ahead into recon. There are many different types of recon, and all very important to the battle. Before we pick any type of recon, I want to go over the different abilities and different viewing abilities of the units. If you see, for instance, on this AMX-13, just a pair of binoculars at the top here, that means this unit has good optics. It has a very decent ability to view enemy units from a distance. Not making it the best recon, however, more of a close range recon. So that being said, something such as the United States OH-58 Kiowa, that symbol that my cursor is moving over there, that binocular symbol means that that is the top of the line optics. It'll be able to see units from a great distance and be able to tell you what they are. I'm going to be picking a middle of the road, such as the British, well, I guess the British Gazelle, which is a very small helicopter with still very good optics. I'm also going to be picking United States Rangers. I'll be transporting those in a Huey. And let's also take a regular vehicle, and I'm going to be taking the Humvee. So definitely be advised what the optics look like when picking your recon, but also be sure to look at the price of the recon, because these are very weak units. Most of the time they are either unarmed and armored, or have little armor and are barely armed. For instance, the Gazelle has no armor and is completely unarmed and is 70 points. That is more than some main battle tanks that we had looked at in the previous tab. Okay, so moving on to vehicles real quick. Vehicles are kind of going to be a lot of ATGM missile launchers, some recoilless rifles, and just kind of odds and ends that really don't go anywhere else. So for the vehicle tab, I'm going to be taking the AMX-10P, which carries a 20mm cannon and a Milan F1 ATGM rocket launcher. This is going to be a very good and very fast attacker, simply because that 20mm cannon has armor-piercing power, as you can see on the stats bar, which means it can get up in close and personal with tanks and be able to scare them off and perhaps even destroy them, and also has great high explosive power, making it very dangerous to infantry. Along with its paired Milan F1 rocket launcher, taking out tanks at a distance will not be a problem with that. I'm also going to be putting the British Striker in my lineup. The Striker is a ATGM rocket launcher only. That means it has low armor around the board, and but also has a large range capability, large armor-piercing power, and the suppression of enemy units is topped out. So let's go ahead and add that. And I'm also going to be adding an M67A1 Zippo. The Zippo holds napalm rounds, which will allow you to go in with armor and clear towns effectively without risking your main battle tanks. Also be careful that every game friendly fire is on, so if you by accident napalm your own infantry, you lose your own infantry as well as enemy infantry. So let's go on to helicopters. Helicopters are going to be a very important support for your army. Um, Picking a good helicopter is important uh, just because they're very fast. They have most of the time they have a lot of firepower, which can help you out if you're in a pinch. Um, with that being said, they're also extremely vulnerable to anti-aircraft, and in some instances they might cost a pretty penny. Okay, so for this lineup, I'm going to be taking the AH-1E Cobra, which is a good middle-of-the-road attacking helicopter. As you can see on the stats panel, it carries a 20mm Vulcan cannon, Hydra 70 rockets, and a few TOW anti-tank missiles. I'm also going to be taking the French Gazelle. Um, this carries one 20mm cannon. It'll be good for stopping infantry from moving ahead. I'll also be taking the UH-1C Heavy Hog. This is for an in-close and personal, kind of a suppression helicopter with those unguided rockets and grenade launchers. So moving on to planes, this is probably one of the biggest and newest things in air-land battle, and definitely has a few quirks in it that you kind of have to work out for yourself. For any deck that you build, you want to go over to this aircraft tab and go ahead and pick an air superiority fighter. Air superiority fighters are very important in the sense that they'll be able to let you easily take out and destroy other enemy planes, which will almost definitely be in the air. So you have definitely an option when picking air superiority fighters. You can go with a very cheap F4F German air superiority fighter, or you can go with a very expensive American F-14 Tomcat. A thing to keep in mind is that money does indeed buy the better units when it comes to aircraft. So for this deck, I'm going to go ahead and take an F-15 Eagle and as my air superiority fighter, just because it is one of the best in the game. I'm also going to go ahead and take a EA-6B Prowler. Now the Prowler is a very unique type of aircraft, as it's a seed aircraft, as you can see in the NATO icon on the top right corner of the stats. Seed aircraft have the unique capability of targeting and only targeting enemy anti-aircraft that use radar rounds. Radar rounds we talked about under the support tab. Another thing to keep in mind when picking out your seed aircraft is the speed and the ECM abilities of this unit. ECM stands for electronic countermeasures, and will give your unit a better ability to dodge enemy guns and mobile SAM missiles. Speed is also important if you need to evacuate your aircraft quickly. Speed will play a very important factor in doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and add the Prowler into my lineup. I'm also going to take a look at a bomber real quick. I'm going to be taking a Mirage, French Mirage bomber. As you can see, this says it's a multi-role combat aircraft, which is true because it carries two magic missiles, though it is not advised to use this aircraft in that sense, simply because it carries 8 400-kilogram AoE bombs, AoE standing for Area of Effect. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in, and I'm going to try and find a good bomber. Here we are. Okay, so the Starfighter, as you can see, the NATO icon says ground attack aircraft, and this exclusively holds a cannon purely for self-defense and also bombs. There are three different types of freefall bombs. The three are AoE, cluster, and napalm. Cluster bombs are good for if you need to suppress tanks or infantry. Napalm is good if you need to take out infantry or block line of sight. And AoE will also do suppression with a higher chance of destroying targets. So we can add one more unit into our lineup. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to take the A10 Thunderbolt 2. No doubt you've heard stories and tales of the A10, and let me tell you, most of them are true. So, with that all being said, that pretty much clears out all of our NATO deck. Another thing to keep in mind is on the top right hand corner, you'll see this activation points. Now it says 33 out of 33, which means we cannot add any more units to our deck unless we take some out. You'll see that each slot here will cost a certain number of activation points, which goes toward the total. When picking deck modifiers such as era and type, it'll adjust the activation points, mostly for more activation points. So that's just something to keep in mind when deck building. Definitely feel free to experiment with your own deck or with this deck. I have not tried out all of the units by any means, but I know what I like and I know what works for me. So building your own deck is just a lot of trial and error, and just kind of getting the feel of what you need to get and what you need to do. So stay in this video, and my friend Austin and I will be going through basic heads-up display on the main game and basic tactics for Eugen's Wargame Airland Battle.